I get it. Standing in front of the shop floor, watching a friend struggle with a stubborn weld, you're wondering whether a $1,200 machine is really worth the cash or if you're just buying a heavy piece of metal that will end up collecting dust. You've probably asked yourself, do I need a machine that can do MIG, TIG, and stick all in one, or am I better off with a single process welder that's a little cheaper? That hesitation is exactly why I'm breaking it down today. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, this 200A multifunction welder is marketed as a one-stop shop for anyone who needs to jump between steel, stainless steel, and aluminum without swapping out gear. The idea is appealing for small shops, hobbyists, and even the occasional contractor who has to move from a thin-sheet aluminum panel to a heavy-gauge steel beam in the same day. The machine weighs about 13 kilograms, which, compared with most 200-amp welders that tip the scales at 20 kilograms or more, makes it genuinely portable enough to toss into a van and set up on a job site in minutes. Who should consider this unit? If you're a DIY enthusiast who's already dabbling in a few different welding processes, maybe you built a garden table with MIG, repaired a stainless steel railing with TIG, and once tried a stick weld on an old pipe, this could be a sensible upgrade. The fact that it supports double pulse MIG and pulse MIG means you can get smoother bead profiles on thin sheet metal, something a plain MIG will struggle with. It also claims to handle 1.06.0 mm aluminum, with the sweet spot at 1.24.0 mm. For a home workshop that does a lot of automotive restoration or custom bike frames, that range covers most of the aluminum work you'll encounter. On the flip side, if you're a professional fabricator whose day is spent welding 10 mm structural steel on a production line, you'll probably find the 200A limit a bit restrictive. You'll be pushing the machine to its upper edge just to keep a consistent bead, and you might run into voltage drops when the power source isn't perfectly stable. In that scenario, a dedicated stick or MIG unit with a higher current rating would likely give you more headroom and less need to constantly adjust the settings. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths that show up once you actually plug it in. The biggest win is the ease of swapping between processes. The control panel is digital and, thanks to the two-language software support, you can switch from MIG to TIG with just a few button presses. That eliminates the hassle of juggling separate torches, cables, and gas bottles. I tested it on a 2 mm stainless steel sheet, something that tends to warp when you overheat it. The TIG mode delivered a clean, narrow bead without the burn-through you'd see on a lower-quality welder. When I switched to double-pulse MIG on a 3 mm aluminum panel, the bead was remarkably even, with very little spatter, which saved me time on post-cleanup. Portability isn't just a weight claim, it translates into real convenience. I moved the unit from my garage to a friend's farm to fix a broken gate hinge made of mild steel. The whole setup, machine, torch, gas bottle, was on a single rolling cart. I powered it from a standard 240V outlet, and within 10 minutes I had a solid stick weld that held up under a test load. No heavy-duty generator was needed, which is a big plus for anyone who works in places without permanent power. But there are trade-offs that show up when you dig a little deeper. The multifunction nature means you're getting a jack of all trades, not a master of any one. The pulse control, while useful, isn't as refined as what you'd find on a dedicated pulse MIG welder from a higher-end brand. You'll notice a slight lag in response when you try to tweak the pulse width on the fly, which can be noticeable on very thin aluminum where you need split-second adjustments. Also, the machine's duty cycle, how long you can weld before it needs to cool, drops noticeably when you push it past 150A. For a quick repair job, that's fine, but for a marathon welding session, the cooler will beep more often than you'd like. Another point that matters to buyers is the gas management. Because the unit handles 3 processes, you'll have 3 separate gas connections: argon for TIG, an argon-CO mix for MIG, and possibly pure CO for stick. The regulator setup isn't bundled, so you'll need to purchase a manifold or a few extra regulators if you want a clean, single-hose solution. That adds a small but real cost to the overall package, something people often overlook when they just glance at the headline price. From a value perspective, the real money saver is the elimination of multiple machines. If you already own a MIG and a TIG, you're probably spending well over $2,000. Consolidating them into one unit can shave that number down, especially if you're okay with